Naotsiam, friends and relatives, Haishkasiam, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to this live stream of the Children of the Setting Sun Productions. And the theme of our live stream today is thanking our healers. And we're thinking of all of our healers that are stepping forward and being in the front lines, taking care of our communities. And tonight we have a wonderful list of presenters, guests that are going to share a few words of thanks and talk a little bit about the work that they've done in the community, some of the healing, some of the work to bring healing to the community. And we're very honored to be here. Thank you to the Children of the Setting Sun Productions for putting on this live stream. This is an attempt to lift the spirits of our community and come together and be able to dialogue and hear from some of the folks that are working on the front line, as well as ask questions. And so I know that we have the opportunity to ask some questions. So once again, we just want to say thank you, welcome to the live stream here tonight. And first of all, we want to say that we had intended to have some guests from the Lummi Health Clinic here today. Unfortunately, there was a death in the community that involved with some of the workers that were responding, and they're not able to join us tonight. And so we're just sending our thoughts and prayers and positive healing and upliftment to them at this time, and we apologize that they cannot join us tonight, but we'll be thinking of them in prayer. We're going to have our guests speak in a little bit. We have Stephen and Dr. Gwen Point, Dr.Robert Blum, and Lynda Mapes, and we have some live audience members as well, Ron So, and of course we want to wish a big happy birthday to Danita Washington, who's celebrating a birthday today. So but before we get into our introductions and discussion points, we want to turn the floor or the microphone over to Steve and Gwen Point to open up in a prayerful way, and we'll do that at this time.
Grandfather, we give you thanks for this day. We give you thanks for this time that we're sharing together. We ask that you be with us at this time to help us in our words and our thoughts and in our actions. We ask you to guide us at this time so that we can feel stronger and more determined and hopeful at the same time. Grandfather, we ask that you keep all those that are working in hospitals for the sick, have strength to keep themselves safe. And we have a prayer in our heart for those who are sick, who have been caught up in this disease. We ask, Grandfather, for a healing of body, mind, and spirit. Grandfather, we don't know your mind, but you have been with us all this time. We know that you love us. God, grant me a sign. God, grant me a sign. Let me know you're still with me every day, every night. Let me hear your voice saying everything's gonna be alright. God can be a sign. I can hear the children laughing, bouncing on mama's knee. I can hear the birds singing and the buzzing of the bee. God grant me a sign, and God grant me a sign. Hey, God grant me a sign. Let me know you're still with me every day, every night. Let me hear your voice saying everything's gonna be alright. God can be a sign. Hey.
All right.
All those counts, Jerry.
This is me giving you a standing ovation. Hey.
I wrote that song many years ago now, but I guess not everybody believes in God the way some of us do. But we believe there's a guidance and there's creator up there, and at times like this, it's humbling to see the amazing work that's being done in healing and sacrifice, and just I think that's a miracle, and I'm very grateful for that.
Well, thank you so much for opening up our show in a prayerful way, and also sharing that. I've witnessed a lot of the work that both of you have done, but this is a unique occurrence for me. I did not know on your resume you had a rock star. So I'm adding that to my list of introduction as well. But I did want to say, just for the folks that are tuning in that may not know either of you or both of you, doing tremendous work in well, not only Indian country, but just in Canada, and I've seen you at many gatherings here in the States. But just to kind of paint the picture of some of the experience, graduate. I should have said. Well, I should have began by saying um, the Indian names are Shoishquilwat, Shoishquit, and Quiliwatil. Quiliwatil.
That's good. Yeah.
That was not bad because I learned that 10 years ago. I spent 2 days trying to remember, and then I wrote it down, and then that's what I've been practicing. So I was in the ballpark, I'll say. But very honored to have you both here. The Honourable Stephen Point, graduate of UBC's law school, served as a chief Squawkali First Nation.
Squawkale
First Nation, also tribal chair of Stalo Nation, Grand Chief, Stalo Tribal Council, a long list of provincial court judge. We won't hold that against you. We know hopefully that's, and then lots of lieutenant governor of British Columbia. So a lot of good work, not only for our tribal communities, but just for the people of Canada in general. And Dr. Gwen Point, respected Stalo leader and mentor, and held a number of provincial government positions, regional posts supporting education, children and family services, and First Nations communities. From 2007 to 2012, as spouse of the Lieutenant Governor, Dr. Point served as BC's chatelaine. I don't even know what that is. It sounds French.
It means master of the house.
Yes, head of the house.
Yeah.
Head
All
of
right.
the government house. Yeah.
A role that demanded her participation in numerous and diverse public engagements. So, also an honorary degree in education, doctoral degree, contributions to the Stalo language and cultural education, including recognition by the Stalo Nation, the Seattle Art Museum, and others. In 2006, the Chilliwack School District set up 2 bursaries in her honor. And in 2016, Dr. Point, you became the 2nd Chancellor of the University of the Fraser Valley. So thank you so much for being here. And these are kind of your public faces, but we also know of the work that you do in the community, some of the healing work, and just being a presence in our tribal communities and coming forward to help the communities along. And I really just want to turn the floor over to both of you to share, as we're trying to thank the healers today, what kind of healing work or work do we do to support these healers? And I'll let you both respond.
Well, I'll start off with,
Okay.
by telling you that Gwen is actually, she doesn't have an honorary degree. She has a real doctorate.
Right on.
She has a bachelor's
apologies.
degree and a master's degree from Oregon and a PhD from Simon Fraser. I'm the one that has the honorary degrees.
All right on.
He's got the real one.
I was reading off the award that you received here. Both of you received the award, and my apologies. They must have
Yeah,
a
Honorary degree from you, Vic.
Yeah. But anyway, I just wanted to say that what we've been trying to do through our healing conferences that we started a couple of years ago, and for a long time now, working in the community, working in healing and in prayer, is getting folks to the point where they begin to understand their responsibility for health. When Europeans first arrived, there were medical systems in place. There were midwives taking care of the new babies. There were women and men who were capable in medicines, herbal medicines. And so the side that Gwen and I have picked up, of course, is the working with spirit. And Gwen has been doing it a lot longer than I have. I've been doing more work in energy and taught by our elders in this area. And this work is difficult. It's not easy. We're on call 24 hours a day, every day of the week. People come to our home here for help. And since the COVID pandemic has arisen here, the number of folks coming here is dropped off entirely. We understand that. And we know that people are concerned, and they're worried about what they can do. And but I must say that that what we were trying to do with the healing conference was to introduce people to self-healing methods, to having the courage to ask for help, to get to know a little bit more about the work that we're doing, so that we can put power in their hands to help themselves. But when she goes to hospitals all the time, when we're called, she's been to hospitals in Seattle and way down as far as Muckleshoot. We go down to help people there. As far east as Alberta, she's been flown there. Far north is Terrace, and up at the island, people have called, they want help. And so we're doing this work on the side of our table while we're working. I've been doing this work through the years that I was a judge. Of course, Gwen did this work while she was a professor at the university. And so it means that we're doing double duty all the time. And the amazing thing that's happened since this COVID is that we've just been staying at home and recharging our batteries. That's been pretty amazing. Pretty amazing, actually.
Well, I just to take off where Stephen was speaking to is how do you thank the healers? I think it's like anything else. When you have children, the greatest gift to the parents is when you see your child stand up and take their place, when they begin to look after themselves. You feel like you did your job. And what we learned, and another reason why we started having the healing conferences, we had 2 years in a row. Not sure if it's going to happen this year because of COVID now. We just leave that in the hands of the Spirit, God willing. But what we learned over the years, because our families have been through so much trauma, with residential schools, with the 60s scoop, being put on reserves, our language taken away, racism, discrimination. And I remember years ago when I first started out, it's been over close to 30 years or over 30 years for me now doing this, is a doctor, like the good person we have on with us today, mentioned the word PTSD, and at that time I didn't even know what it meant, but I likened it to the war and people that served. But it truly is that. Our people had more than their share of trauma. And COVID, I still remember my grandfather talking about the smallpox when he was a young boy. That didn't happen that long ago. And now we're living through COVID here. So the trauma we realized that exists in every community, every family. And I would travel at a drop of the dime and to Seattle, come back 3, 4 in the morning and get up and go to work. And it was just endless. And then after a while, I realized to ask the question, lucky I have Stephen to talk to, is I would learn to ask the question, is this an emergency? If it's not an emergency, you have to wait. Because I would deal with emergencies and then make time for people that it wasn't an emergency. We got a little bit smarter. But after that, we found another wave of understanding is we're going back to the same people, the same families, the same communities. And when we talked about that, we realized that it's not enough just to help somebody. It was more important, or just as important, yes, help them, but we need to teach them how to look after themselves. And there, we began to teach the families, if you belong to the Longhouse, what are you supposed to be doing? If you belong to another prayerful group, what should you be doing? And if you don't have that, you need to learn how to take care of body, mind, and spirit. You have to. And the other question I would ask people is, do you really want help? Do you really want help? Because of the trauma, they don't even know subconsciously that they've been told so many times, programmed, that they are not good enough, they don't deserve this, and it repeats. So we've, over the years, this is 30, 40 years of work that from working with our communities, and lucky to be able to talk this out. And we realize that it's we have to take it up another level. So we realized, like Stephen said earlier, that there are other people in the communities. We have a young man that's a massage therapist, but he's very spiritual, culturally in tune. We have people that know the medicine plants and have begun to work with medicine plants. And we have other people that can talk to individuals that are struggling from a real cultural lens. So that's what we realized. It was actually Stephen, he's the one who had the dream. And he told me that there's all these people in our backyard with red shirts and red bandanas. And the people kept coming, and we were helping these people, but it wasn't just the two of us. So that's when we had the first healing conference, is to bring all the different types of healers in our communities. There's a man that works with stone. There's another man that works with the medicine wheel. And, there's people gifted with song. And so we brought them all together and we put it out to our people. The first year was just the trial run. And we had our local people come, and we stood up these people and encouraged them. You have to pick this up now and run with it. You have to stand up and start helping in our families and communities. So this last year was huge. We had to cap it at 300, and we had interest from Alberta, interest from the Yukon, and that's what we did, was our second year of healing. So the greatest gift, I think, for a healer, and I know it's happened to both of us, is when a person comes and said, you helped me 25 years ago. And I remember the first time our local priest came. He's a bishop now. We grew up with him. He came and he said, I need your help. And he brought us to a house of non-native people. And the little boy had cancer. Mm-hmm. And at first I was hesitant, right, to do this, but it's not up to me. I don't question. That's the one thing I've learned, is not to question. And so we helped the little guy, and then we left. And it was 3-4 years later. It was Christmas time, and we were struggling financially because we're just coming out of university. We didn't have very much for Christmas. I was feeling sorry for myself, more because I couldn't get things for my children, right? And I was in a store, standing in line to pay, and a tap on my shoulder, and I turned around, and there was this fellow standing there, and he said, Mrs. Point. And I said, yes. He said, you don't remember me? And I said, no. He said, you came and helped my little boy. And I looked at him and I thought, oh yeah, I remember you. And he said, here he is. And he stood behind his dad. And I just got filled with emotion. And I thanked him, thank you, thank you. And that was it. And I realized that that was my Christmas gift.
Mhm.
We get caught up in this world of materialism and wanting to give materials. But at a time like this with COVID, all of that has no meaning. Health and family, you're rich. So the greatest gift to, I think, a healer or an elder or your community or your family is to learn to look after yourself. I just talked to one of the local school districts, to the workers. And I told them, create this map if you want, body, mind, and spirit. And make sure you can check each box. What you're doing for your mind, what you're doing for your body, what you're doing for your spirit. Because now's the time. You have to be strong in your mind, strong in your heart, strong in your belief in spirit, so we can get through this in a good way. Bottom line, in a good way, right? Not taking from somebody else, not keeping things to yourself, but sharing your knowledge, sharing your gift. But today, I think it is a gift in a way for us to be able to stay home and look after one another and have this downtime. So you learn to appreciate things like that.
Mhm. Yeah. One of the problems with our worldview is that something negative happens, we tend as Native people to try to think of what caused it. And we often blame ourselves, or we feel guilty. There's something I did that brought this on to me. And a lot of the work that we're doing is trying to alleviate these feelings, because um, the person is often reluctant to seek help or to ask for help for themselves, and we're trying to help people to realize that these feelings aren't necessary. That it's not always this way, that something that you did or that your father did has created this situation, and that you don't deserve these sort of illnesses. And it helps them in their state of mind, helps them in their desire to get well, and helps them to find a way forward, for the body to begin to heal itself. And we have these cultural blocks sometimes that need to be adjusted and talked about. And so a lot of the work we're doing is just talking to people, just helping them to understand, and then bringing them to a better place so that they can get well. But there's not enough of us doing this work for Native people. There's a real shortage.
Mhm.
And a lot of people don't believe in a lot of this as well, and that's okay. But still, there's a lot of work that's out there, and time like this, when there's a lot of people afraid, they're concerned for their safety and health. They should know that um, this is happening to everybody around the world, and this is entirely something that you can help yourself with by staying isolated, by uh, washing your hands and trying your best not to touch your face, that sort of thing. Being aware that it's spread in this way. Um, I know that we like to go to our gatherings, especially funerals and prayer ceremonies, that sort of thing. But for now, you're going to have to just pray at home alone, the way we are right now. We're praying at home. And I pray every night, sing my songs at night. And you know, I know that people are thinking about us because I have a hard time to sleep. But they have to have a strong thought in their minds and don't feel that it's your fault. And it's going to get over pretty soon, and we'll be able to see one another again. But for now, it's important to just follow the instructions as best as we can, and we'll get through this.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the amazing stories, but the wisdom and the approach, living from a healing way to address traumas. And I've seen that a lot, and heard a lot of discussions and within my own family, talking about the way Indigenous people handle trauma. And, I really appreciate what you both have shared about using and embracing the healing way to address traumas, and how, it's almost a second nature to our communities, where we have a pandemic again, we have a pandemic again, influenza and smallpox and diabetes and alcoholism. And, so I really appreciate that, that we tried to embrace that healing way to address those traumas. And I also appreciated, this idea of, yes, we want to help people, but we want to help them take care of themselves. So thank you so much, for sharing that. And I think it's, we're trying to uplift our healers and think about our frontline workers, and, raising our hands to them and praying for them, and sending them our strength and sending thoughts of healing, because they need to be able to embrace that for themselves. We're hearing on the news, and I was really interested in hearing, from our local doctors, how they take care of themselves. How do they, recuperate or bounce back? Because I just cannot imagine going to the office every day to face, what's in front of them. And so, really, thank you for sharing those words. And I want to turn towards our next guest, Dr. Robert Blum, and I'm gonna probably butcher his resume as well, but I do know he has a MD from Howard University, a PhD from University of Minnesota, and an MPH from the University of Minnesota. So that makes him an MD, PhD, MPH. That's got to be rare. He's done a lot of work, and he's going to explain a little bit his connection. He's worked. He's based in Baltimore, and has worked at the John Hopkins University for many years. Director of the Johns Hopkins Urban Health Institute. He's a past president of the Society for Adolescent Medicine. Served on the American Board of Pediatrics, is a charter member of the Subboard of Adolescent Medicine, is past chair of the Guttmacher Institute Board of Directors, worked with the World Bank and UNICEF and the United Nations Population Fund, where recently he authored the guidance on adolescent pregnancy, as well as the World Health Organization, where he served as the technical advisory group of the Child and Adolescent Health Department. And so it's my honor to introduce Dr. Blum, and it'd be great to hear anything that I left out, but also hear your response to what we're facing right now with COVID-19, and talk about your connection with Lummi Nation and Daryl and the Youth Academy and the Children of the Setting Sun. So, Dr. Blum, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Michael, and thank you for having me on. It is an incredible honor. I was both deeply moved and inspired by what the points are saying, and the issues of what health and healing are about. The only thing that I would mention that you left out of my resume that is of some importance is the opportunity I had to work with Daryl Hilaire and colleagues on the Lummi Reservation as you all were planning and thinking through in wonderful detail the development of what became the Lummi Youth Academy, and to have been able to watch this develop from a distance over the years since has been just incredible. I first learned about pandemics when I was very young, 6, 7, 8 years of age, and I learned it from my father. See, my father was born at the very end of 1912, and Christmas Day, actually, 1912. And 5 years later, he was orphaned. His mother died first, and 3 months later, his father died. That was 1918, and that was the Great Flu epidemic. And he was fortunate. He was taken in by his aunt and uncle, who were extremely poor. They had no capacity to take in his 2 other brothers or his sister, who were left to fend for themselves at the age of 12, 14, and 17. So I learned about what an epidemic can do to wipe out a family. And the stories are so well told over and over again. I know that there are entire communities, the Inuit, for example, in Alaska, that were wiped out in the 1918 flu epidemic. 52 million people worldwide died. It was the worst epidemic we have seen until now. And hopefully this COVID-19 will never approximate what that 1918 flu epidemic did. I think as we think about honoring healers, it's, for me, important to honor the wisdom and foresight that the Lummi Tribal Council had, and that Tribal Chairman Solomon had at the very beginning of March, a month ago, before people saw what was coming down. They saw what was coming down. They invested resources to protect the Lummi Nation. But one of the things that we know, and one of the things that you sadly have experienced today, is that this infection, this virus, doesn't stop at any boundary. And so it has cost the life of one of your members today. But so many more lives have been saved by that wisdom of a month ago. A couple of words about the work that I do and my colleagues do at Johns Hopkins hospital and in the School of Public Health, and a few observations. So we work in many different spheres, both within the United States and internationally. Specifically around COVID, we coordinate the monitoring system. So if you go online and look at COVID maps of the United States or the world, more likely than not, it is the Johns Hopkins University map that you're looking at. A team of colleagues are working on vaccine development. There is a national consortium of biomedical researchers collaborating on vaccine development. There are many other vaccine projects, but this is the largest coordinated research project in the United States. There are a whole other group that are working on treatments for COVID. And again, these are often done in multi-site and frequently multinational collaborations. We have strong relationships, for example, with China, where researchers are looking at serum of people who had been infected with COVID and recovered to see whether, to what extent, subclinical or clinical presentations with COVID can be protective. And there are others who are working on what will need to be in place as this pandemic recedes. What are the supports people will need? What are the mental health services, the physical health services, the emotional supports they will need to recover? My work is focused completely on youth. That is how I became partner with and working with Daryl and colleagues. And one of the things that we see are that young people pay an incredibly high price for this. I mean, if you think about it, the school year is closed. My graduation that I had worked so hard for now is not going to take place. I'm separated from my friends, and we're struggling in our household to make do and have enough food. And this is my experience of COVID. And when the infection resolves, some of this trauma doesn't go away. And Gwen, I think you used the term PTSD. This is this generation's major battle, and the consequences of it will be sustained. Let me stop here and turn it back to you, Michael.
I can't tell if I'm muted or not. Thank you so much, Dr. Blum. Appreciate your words and that personal experience. That's what I was trying to tap upon as well. When we're talking about traumas that our communities have experienced, and often those stories come from our elders or our parents or grandparents who share those experiences from tough times, and that's how we can pull together and try to make sense of what's happening. So, thank you for sharing that, and also about the work you're doing, and the folks at Johns Hopkins University, tracking the spread of the COVID-19. I want to introduce Lynda Mapes. Lynda Mapes is from a reporter with the Seattle Times, and somebody that I met quite a while ago through Daryl and his work. We got to share a meal together, and from since then I became a regular reader of her newspaper articles, and if you've I don't know what I don't have very many opportunities where I feel like I have a inside person on things, like an inside tip or an inside somebody who's kind of supporting me from the inside of something. But Lynda is one of those people I certainly appreciate, where she kind of brings the voice of our communities to a major uh, audience, and things that we we don't necessarily have the voice to be able to bring that far. It's always exciting to see that appear in the Seattle Times, and she's covered things, all the way from our um, battles with substance abuse, and our work with environmental recovery, and then most recently, the work on that our communities are doing on COVID-19. So very honored to have you here today, Lynda, and whatever you feel like you're sharing, maybe the next news article you're working on, or some thoughts and reflections on the work you've done already.
I really appreciate being with you all this evening. It's already greatly lifted up my heart, and I just feel deeply honored and delighted to be with you all, even by Zoom. Thank you all for your words. I want to share a little bit about some of the things that I've been seeing and hearing since my work went all virus all the time. And my particular lens has been to tell the story of tribal communities and what's been going on and how tribal communities are handling this. And I'm honored deeply to be telling that particular story. And I thank you all for your help in telling it. As you know, this is what I really do is I bring a big drum and I hand it to you and I ask you to tell your story. We reach 1.8 million people in print and online, and those stories live on the web forever. So you never know who these stories are going to touch. And it is a great privilege to hand that to the people I work with and say, what do people need to know? What can we show? What can we teach? Because it really is about, teach, share, educate, which is the mission of Children of the Setting Sun. So how apt that we're here together tonight. I want to say one of the first things that I wrote on this for the public was about tribes in particular and their terrible knowledge. Pandemic in Indian country is one of the oldest stories. And because of that knowledge, so dearly hard and held in families everywhere, tribes acted fast. I mean, while our federal government was still stumbling around, while even our own governor hadn't figured it out yet, tribes were closing borders. They were putting their elders off limits. They were sourcing test kits. They were getting ready for a war. They knew from the stories. They knew from their own grandparents, as you point out, Gwen. This wasn't some hypothetical. This wasn't, oh, maybe it'll come, maybe it won't. Tribes knew, and they acted fast. And you're absolutely right, Dr. Blum. They've saved lives by doing that, and they acted extremely. I mean, it's a big deal to drop a gate at the entrance to the Hoh Reservation. Say you're not coming in here, and you're not leaving here, and if you do leave, you're not coming back for 2 weeks. Same thing at Makah, and shelter in place on the Lummi Reservation. We're gathering as a way of life. These are hard, loving actions, and tribes did it first, and then they shut down casinos that are a lifeline for these tribal governments. That they didn't have to do that. They did it to be in solidarity with the communities where they were. As a matter of fact, a lot of these casinos are the largest employers, and not only that, but they continued paying their people and kept their employees on the payroll. These are lessons. This is a kind of mentoring, really, for the outside. And I think people have really been inspired by these stories. been shocking, frankly, the lack of a federal response. We all know this is nothing new. I mean, education and healthcare were promised in the treaties of cession, these forced treaties of cession here on the US side of the border. We know those are broken promises, but nonetheless, it has been shocking to see the degree. I can give you an example of the Seattle Indian Health Board, which serves 6,000 people in King County, not only an American Indian and Alaska Native, but also other people, but they specialize in care for Native people. They've received literally nothing from the federal government, not a single face shield, not a single mask, not a single respirator, zero. And the time that 200 test kits were offered, it was with completely unacceptable red tape, such they couldn't even deliver the news to their own people. They would have had to, call some federal call center. Well, that call was never going to be made. People of color were not going to make that call. And so that it has been shocking, frankly, to see the stumble and the lack of help, even when money has finally been released by Congress. That money has yet to make it to tribal governments or tribal health clinics. That 40 million we all heard about, that has yet to be dispersed. Incredibly, there's no way to get it to the tribal governments. Secondly, this so-called $1 trillion aid package, there's money there that still, it isn't figured out how it's getting down to the grassroots, to the communities where it's needed. So, I don't want to be negative on this phone call, but it is important to recognize, to point out, to say truth, and they've not upheld their trust responsibility. Now, so what has been happening is that tribal governments and communities have been stepping up themselves, and in completely surprising and beautiful ways. Some of these have been very, very big and institutional, such as the leadership that we've seen at Lummi. But some of it's just been people to people, person to person. I wrote a story just 2 days ago that really lifted up my heart. This was a Nooksack tribal member who's an artist, who's been very successful. He founded a store. It's the Pike Place Market, our biggest tourist draw. It's called 8th Generation. It's where the beautiful blankets came from that we were gifted with, Daryl, in your honoring ceremony recently. And Louis Gong, just, he knows how to get things made in China. He knows how to get a lot of things made in China fast. So he got on Facebook with the director, the CEO of the Seattle Indian Health Board, and said, tell me, what do you need? And Esther Lucero walked him through that, and he called his suppliers and manufacturers that he has worked with. He doesn't own the company anymore. He sold it to the Snoqualmie tribe in November, but nonetheless, he's still intimately involved. And he said, I need this, and I need that, and I need this. And in 8 days, he had 4,000 respirators and 6,000 masks and 300 face shields sitting on the loading dock at the Seattle Indian Health Board. This is something that the federal government, the state government couldn't get done in, well, let's see, the first death in Washington was in February 29th. So here we are. He got it done in 8 days, and did it with grace and humor and love. And so I find those kinds of stories are going on all around us. The Chief Seattle Club, right now, restaurants are shut down, takeout only. They're still serving hot meals twice a day to people who are experiencing homelessness. They serve Indian people in Seattle in Pike Place Market. And I just think that's so beautiful. They're open early every day, the cold hours, the lonely hours, to serve a hot breakfast. And then they've got a sack lunch for you to take. And the Seattle Indian Health Board has stepped up to do testing there with some of the most high-risk people. And, to keep their workers safe, they put out a call, and 100 people donated scrubs for the staff. So when they get home, they can just drop their stuff at the door and be safe with their families. They wanted those donated clothes to be nice, so the executive team at Seattle Indian Health Board took them all home and washed them to have them fresh and ready for their staff. So that's the kind of beauty that's unfolding around us. I would say also, as a reporter, that this experience is also unfolding ugliness that we've known for a very long time, these social disparities. Don't we all see how now we see them more than ever? While some of my colleagues are worried about, do they have the right background for their Zoom, conference call? What about the kids at Ho who can't even get education at all now because they don't have an internet connection in their home? period, straight up. Don't have it. They live in a very isolated place. It's a tiny tribe. They've got very little money. Their infrastructure is minimal. They don't have high-speed internet. Their internet, if they have it at all, is 0.3 or 0.5. It's a crawler. And so this idea that now for the rest of the school year, these tribal kids are going to have an education. The schools are trying, they're putting together paper homework packets that they drop off every Monday. But that's just very tough and frankly unacceptable, that we're going to have tribal communities in these remote places that those kids just won't get an education because they don't have a fat pipe internet service. They're still using copper wires if they've got them at all. And that's wrong. And it distresses me. That is a story that I'm working on right now. I thought it would be important to do a story about the smaller tribes. And as a matter of fact, the unrecognized tribal communities that aren't even part of the aid pipeline that isn't working very well. What are those stories? How are those, what is the lived experience of the parents who are trying to educate their kids and of, the people at Ho who are trying to get enough food for the food bank? You shut your border, your food bank runs out pretty fast. And there were people over the weekend who were driving meat donations to Ho to meet at the halfway point. I think that's a beautiful thing. But the story I'm working on now is to go to smaller tribal communities and ask, what's going on? What's the story behind the barricade at Ho? What's the story behind the barricade out there at Macau? But these aren't just stories about suffering. They're also stories of incredible resilience and wisdom. The old ways, the ways that you were talking about, Gwen and Stephen, of healing and of helping one another. These ways that some of us have not been wise enough to learn. And so it's about new ways of helping one another. As a reporter, it's been very interesting to have to figure out on the fly new ways of working. I'm not leaving my house for the same reason none of us is leaving our house, because the last thing I'm going to do is take my Seattle germs out to one of these reservations. You'd have to kill me first. I would never do it. So how do I get it done? We have to have pictures. We need to hear people's voices. We need to have the intimacy of true story sharing. And so with the story that I wrote about Dr. Dakota Lane and the Tribal Council's brave work on healing at Lummi, we did that by a live video link to my study here in my house. And a photographer from the Seattle Times came to my house and took a picture of Dr. Dakota Lane on my video screen. And that was the picture in the Seattle Times on the front page, was his face framed in my computer on my desk. There's my pencil cup. I mean, it's a little weird, but you do what you got to do right now. And for the story I'm working now about small tribes, we made a decision at the newspaper today. We're going to do something we've never done, which is have a community curated visual report. The people are going to take the pictures themselves. And you know what? I bet we're going to see a kind of documentary that we wouldn't get any other way. They will take different pictures than we would take, and they will talk to people that we wouldn't know to take a picture of. And so, there's going to be an editor's note with this story explaining that this is a community curated report. They took the pictures themselves. And, I will do all the interviews by phone, by Zoom. I'm going to talk to the Tribal Council at Ho by Zoom on Wednesday. And I think we can find beauty in all this, and we can find new ways of working and new ways of loving one another. And where we can find gift here, we should. Where we can find learning here, we should. Where we can find ways to support one another, we should. There will be another side to this. And when we get to that other side, what I mostly hope is that we will be stronger and know new ways of helping and loving one another, and we'll have learned things about one another and also about ourselves through this time. So that's what I wanted to share. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much, Lynda. And we really appreciate, or I really appreciate you bringing forward the voice of our communities, the underrepresented, stories. It's really uplifting when we see those stories represented, and when we read about what Lummi was doing and Dr. Lane and kind of the approach. So many folks were talking about that. They're just like, wow, that's really amazing. Lummi's really ahead of things, and addressing things, and really taking this matter on really seriously, way beyond just in a short time. Our mentality has changed, where we're just like thinking this was not really a big deal, to wearing face masks every day now and keeping people out of our community. And so thank you so much, for bringing that voice, illuminating the voice, and it helps our communities as well. Our own people often don't get to hear, what's happening in other tribal communities, and that's really important. We're just about at 7 o'clock. Well, we're 1 minute past, and I just want to say thank you to each and every one of our guests here today, and thank you for sharing the words to kind of uplift our healers, and show our appreciation to them, and your work and wisdom is really vital and important to our communities. So just raising my hands to you and saying thank you. And I know we're going to go over to Steve and Gwen to close up our program. And if I really appreciated that you both shared that you've been slowing down and staying at home, but you're both there together, and you look like you're getting along really well.
That.
As we're all trying to do. So thank you so much for being here, and we'll turn the microphone over to you to close it out for us here tonight.
Just going to end really quick is we are here by ourselves. We don't get to see our brand new grandchild that was born in March. We get to see her through a window. We walk to their house. But otherwise, our children are staying in their homes. We're staying in our homes. We're listening to our leadership, both provincially, nationally, and our medical leadership. Stay home. That's how you can honor all those people, all those healers and medical staff that are doing work beyond our means. This is bigger than all of us, this pandemic. And that's the first lesson the elders teach us is listen. Do what you're told in a good way.
There's a song they sing, it's an old Sioux song. They sing it for picking up a feather when a feather drops. And they say when an old warrior drops, they always pick him up. Oh, oh, hey, oh, oh, hey, oh, oh, hey, oh, oh, hey,
Good. Same thing with Daryl. Come on in.
oh, oh, oh.
Oh.